Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending upon where you live around the world. In front of us today is my latest thoughts on how I can make my workshop efforts more, easier and get a better result from what I'm about to talk about here. And I'm rebuilding my miter saw station, and one of the requirements for that is that I need to clash the edges of the melamine panels with a timber clashing strip, indicated here with the timber grain looking piece. As such, it's not that sturdy and needs quite a bit of support to better distribute the load and therefore the pressure on the strip and the glue to the panel. And what I've been doing, and successfully, is using thin strips like the one I'm indicating here now that have got pads on them, indicated by these little coin-sized circles, and those give pressure distributed along the length of the panel and the strip. So that works very, very well to put the pressure where you need it. The issue is you need a lot of clamps to actually allow the pressure to be distributed reasonably evenly along the clashing strip, otherwise it just bows and doesn't pull in, etc. So that should be understood. So I thought that's a real nuisance, and the need to have lots of clamps is a real necessity, and of course you run out of clamps pretty quickly and space, because the way I've been doing it is laying the panels down flat and putting clamps on it, and it's just a nuisance. And in fact, the panel that was similar to this in length, 1.8 metres long, had 8 clamps on it, and you quickly run out of clamps when you're using that many. Anyway, can we make the clamping experience easier, quicker, more versatile, and, just more pleasurable to do? And that's what I've come up with here. It's the latest version of it. But we make use of the panel itself because like a beam, and then we clamp the clashing strips from this lower part. Or let's put it this way. We're pulling the panel, effectively pulling it down onto the clashing strip, because our clamp, and here I show a lighter version of clamp that has been made more versatile by a clamp extending tube. Now that tube can be pinned to a strong back that then makes it a sandwiching type situation where a wee bit of pressure from the clamp on top will pull the clashing strip up onto the panel. You won't need many clamps either, because you're making use of the sturdy backbone, or the strong back, and the panel stiffness itself. Now there will be a little bit, to be fair, of potential for this to bow, and that's why it needs to be fairly stout, as rigid as we can get it. And it may be that we can even clamp it to the work surface to give that added rigidity when it's needed in the longer panels like this. However, there are situations where, in fact I'll just hide some of this, there may be situations where we can get away with just having the strong back be just 2 clamps on it, and it means therefore that this whole assembly can move or be moved or even taken off of the table, because it's not needed to be fixed to. Longer ones maybe needed to be held on the work surface, but that's debatable. And then we've got the other situation where, if I just hide those, where we may have lower panels and shorter, and they just need to be stabilised, and that's what I'm showing here by this, the triangle here is a bit of a brace, and it can just have these height adjustable clips that can be positioned to stabilise it while we're clamping it. And then because this is fixed to the strong back, the backbone, we can lift the thing up off the table or spin it round to get better access to it or whatever. But I like the versatility of this approach for the clashing strip idea. Now this, in its current form, wouldn't be ideal if you were doing heavy timbers or solid timber. You would probably need a much stronger arrangement, but this could be modified to accommodate that. And again, the benefit is that you're using or utilising the inherent rigidity of the panel itself to help with the clamping. And so long as the sections between the clamps it can't bow, then you've got a really good chance of having a very simple, quick method to do the clamping. Afterwards, while you're still going to be using the clamps in their normal situation or capacity, so that's great. This backbone can be popped up on the shelf somewhere or in a corner for storage until next time. And of course, these are able to be utilised for all sorts of things, workshop related and the bench related. You can hold them down, so long as they're dead square, you can use them for holding other items. I've done that in the past. It proved to be very, very helpful, but I've moved on from that, and we've got a much more sophisticated bench dog type workbench being constructed. Well, these will resurface as probably one of the more... it's like having a third set of hands or another person there, because they can be used to hold panels or boxes or items. So that can be perhaps drilled out to take bench dog clamps, or just to have a bench dog hole here and then clamp it down, so you don't have to worry about the alignments quite so much. But having those holes in this sort of item, tool, accessory, might work quite well with the MFT type of construction and versatility. So that's where we're at the moment. Oh, and the other thing is, it's cheap. And we don't have to worry about having a huge number of clamps. Plus, if they can be moved as easily as I'm suggesting, they can be pushed back out of the way because they are inherently stable and or are clamped down. And it means that we're not having to take up a whole lot of real estate on the workbench for the panel which is lying flat. One of the criteria for what I wanted this to be able to do is to give me good access to where the glue, croaky voice, so I apologise for that, the glue squeeze out can be scraped off and cleaned and damp rag, etc. Being able to get around the clamping area, which was and is a problem when you're using clamps, oftentimes it is. And being able to spin the whole assembly around, if it's not fixed down, means you can get to the other side. Remembering that, in all honesty, it's more likely that that'll be the situation you've got there, and you'll be able to reach around, clean off the back of it. This rod here is just the way of balancing the clamping area down, so that you're not, when you clamp this, it doesn't twist or deform in any way. If that's not an issue, then you could certainly do away with this aspect to it, but I wanted to cover off that potential issue before it raised its head, and then I get out there, go to build it, and then I have a problem. But this is a simple solution. The block here can be threaded on. This is a threaded rod, by the way, of whatever size you decide. but you can thread the block, spin it down to where it's just holding the, just touching the panel being clamped, and then you can put your clamp on top of that to give it the additional pressure. And as I said, these height adjustable clamp or clip that can be positioned to suit the particular panel that you are using and needing to construct. So all in all, I think that's not a bad it's not a bad idea at all, actually, and it's space saving. Oftentimes you see the people that've got lots and lots of clamps. Well, there's a cost there straight away, but if you have to have specialist clamps for longer panel widths, well, that can be a bit of a nuisance and cost quite a bit, and might not be long enough. Whereas here, I can use the lesser cost clamp and just extend it to whatever length I need by use of a pipe. In this case, it was a bit of plumbing pipe. Not polybutylene, it might be polybutylene pipe, and for an example, and it's more than strong enough to resist the clamping forces, which aren't going to be that great, but and as I said, they do need to be distributed, and well, could be a steel or galvanized pipe or something, it's entirely, or a piece of timber for all that matter. So long as it can affix to the strongback, fix to the clamp, doesn't matter what it is, does it? So, yeah, that was one of the things that a little project that I will be looking at doing, mainly because it's really easy to do. The most difficult part of it would be to cut or find a nice stout piece of timber that we can pop some holes in. And yeah, I'm not saying that's very hard at all, but what else is there? And of course, this is just a whatever angle. I've made them about 60 degrees. You don't need them any, you don't need it at 45. It's just a waste because it's not really doing anything. And 60 degrees saves space. Anyway, there we go. This is not a SketchUp video, you could say, but it's more of a workshop one, explaining where we're at, because often prior to actually building the item, I'm only talking about it in general terms, and out in the workshop, it doesn't matter how much I swing my arms about and trying to indicate what I'm talking about, seeing something is a little bit more understandable, and that's what we do here. And that's why I call the channel Sketchy Builder. And that, well, if we're going to do some building, sometimes we'll need to do some SketchUp. And if I can combine both of them, we wind up with a better interface or way of covering the ideas off. There will be some video like this that is dedicated more towards the SketchUp side of it, but mostly it will be related to an idea or an actual project. So that's what we've got here. Well, that's it. I think you can follow that easy enough, and if you think that's worth it, you might give it a bit of a crack yourself and see whether it works for you in your situation. I hope it works as well as I imagine it would, but can't see why it won't. You might come up with another idea. There might be other ways of doing multiple glue-ups on one area. So, yeah. Okay, well, that's it. I'm going to wander off and leave you alone, and I'll see you in the next video. Okay, bye now.